there. We didn't see you.
Welcome to Drama
With Llamas.
in Pajamas.
We are the Drama Llamas. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Athanasia. And we are classical actors who have been making art together for 13 years.
We are here with you today to help bring you into the world of classical theater. We hope to teach you how to understand mostly Shakespeare, but also classical playwrights and genres.
Remember, no one wrote a play hoping it would bore you. So we hope to help you not only understand, but to enjoy this work as well.
So, get comfy in your pajamas.
Grab your llamas and let's do some drama!
"'Twas the night before performance, and all across the stage
Shakespeare's words were leaping off the page,
the drama llamas were decked out in Elizabethan threads,
while Elisions and Alexandrines danced in their heads.
That was a pleasant dream.
It is always nice to hear Shakespeare spoken in the most delicious Iambic Pentameter.
In our last episode, we talked about how you should read Shakespeare out loud. If you haven't seen episode 1, go back and watch it.
So, you're reading it out loud. Where do you start? For now, we are going to skip over the fact that you will encounter a lot of words that you do not know. We will release a whole video on that later. Stay tuned.
At the moment, we are going to discuss how the words are arranged, which is for the most part in verse.
Shakespeare wrote some beautiful prose. Again, stay tuned for a video on how to handle that.
The biggest difference between Shakespeare and a modern play is that people in Shakespeare's time often expected the dramatic works they saw to fit into a certain meter.
That's a fancy word for rhythm. Basically, they expected poetry.
Which is why sometimes Shakespeare and plays from that time period are referred to as
classical verse drama. There are lots of different meters in which a person can write poetry, and they have names, which we should all admit sound bizarre.
Shakespeare and others in Elizabethan England mostly used Iambic Pentameter.
An iamb refers to how many syllables are in a basic rhythmic unit and how they are arranged. In this case, an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable.
This unit is also called a foot. The words refer, explore, and routine are all iambs.
String 5 of those together and you get a pentameter, a 5-footed line.
Remember from geometry that a pentagon has 5 sides.
A super chill real-life example of an iambic pentameter is, I'd love to go and get a cup of tea.
A famous Shakespearean example of an iambic pentameter is, two households, both alike in dignity.
The Elizabethans, who by the way were people who lived during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, believed that a line of iambic pentameter was the most perfect, ideal expression of the English language.
It represented a calm, strong, undisturbed heartbeat.
Da-dum, 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 da-dum. Obviously, we cannot squeeze every thought in the human mind into an iambic pentameter.
Nor is every thought in the human mind an ideal, perfect, strong, calm heartbeat.
Sometimes our thoughts and feelings are disordered. Dun dun dun. Sometimes we are confused,
Angry,
grieving,
rebellious,
distracted,
sick,
exhausted,
or even in an excess of joy. And you may have heard that without conflict, there's no drama.
Expect a lot of disruptions to the calm heartbeat.
These disruptions had specific meanings to the Elizabethans and can really help us understand a text as we feel it in our bodies.
For example, an inverted first foot is the most common disruption, and some Shakespeare experts do not even count this as an exception to the calm heartbeat. It is a foot of meter where the first syllable is stressed and the second is unstressed. Dum-dum. You decide whether, when you see an inverted first foot, whether it doesn't matter at all, or whether the character is trying to get another character's attention, interrupting themselves, or feeling a little hyper. To the last syllable of recorded time from Macbeth's tomorrow speech has an inverted first foot. It would be silly to emphasize the word the. In context, it sounds like this. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. Perhaps Macbeth wants to jolt us out of the boredom we feel about the petty pace of our lives and make us think about the meaning of our days a little more philosophically.
Another disruption is what is called the feminine ending. This is an example of the rampant misogyny in Elizabethan England. It is called a feminine ending because it was considered a weak ending, and women were deemed to be weak. A line with a feminine ending adds an extra syllable to the line. The most obvious example is to be or not to be. That is the question. The word question has 2 syllables, and so there are 11 syllables in the line rather than 10, and the very first syllable is unstressed. Unpack why this word is either feminine or weak to Hamlet in this moment. I would venture to say that it is purely weak and has nothing to do with men versus women. The to be or not to be speech has a lot to do with cowardice and an unwillingness to face the unknown. Ultimately, Hamlet says we choose the devil we know, even if we could achieve a lot more by taking a risk. Merely asking the question of should I do this or not when confronted with a daring choice looks weak to Hamlet in this moment.
Sometimes there are internal disruptions to the line, not at the beginning or the end. Inverted feet and even random extra words can occur anywhere within a line of Shakespearean verse. Titania's line, met we on hill, in dale, forest or mead, from A Midsummer Night's Dream, has a random inverted fourth foot, forest. But is it random? Titania is arguing with her spouse, Oberon, who's just accused her of having an affair. Titania's answer is basically, well, yeah, but we stopped a long time ago when you caught us and said you were mad, so it's water under the bridge. Whether you agree with her logic or not, listen to the feeling of her words in context. These are the forgeries of jealousy, and never since the middle summer's spring met we on hill, in dale, forest or mead, by paved fountain or by rushy brook, or in the beached margent of the sea, but with thy brawls thou hast disturbed our sport. One might imagine Titania's husband rolling his eyes and trying to leave the conversation when she accuses him of being overly jealous and making stuff up. Reversing the expected stresses in the word forest is the verbal equivalent of tapping him on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, I'm still talking to you." The audience sits up and pays a little more attention too.
Another example from to be or not to be has a random extra word, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. In context, it sounds like this. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. No more. If by a sleep to say we end, the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. Whoa. Did Hamlet just say that dying is better than living? that life is basically a series of slings and arrows getting shot at you, tsunamis knocking you down, and earthquakes or lightning strikes depending on how you interpret shocks. We know that Hamlet is a tragedy, which means everyone important dies at the end. Hopefully, anyone saying the modern equivalent of these words will seek appropriate mental health resources.
Let's save the drama for your llama and not have a tragedy in real life. Back to the verse. I would like to point out that there are 5 feminine endings in this excerpt, 4 of them right in the row at the very beginning. Decide for yourself what that means for Hamlet's mental state. But for now, concentrate on the fact that in the 5th line, the first line that ends on a stressed syllable, by the way, he sticks an extra word in the middle of the line, so it also has 11 syllables. And by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. We've all heard the expression, come back with your shield or on it, meaning be either victorious or dead, but not captured, which begs the question, who is Hamlet's enemy here?
But now that we're actually looking death in the face instead of talking about it, we need the audience to listen. So, Hamlet throws in an extra word just to make sure that if you were lulled to sleep by a meter that reminded you of your mommy's heartbeat, you are waking up now.
The to be or not to be speech is the exception that proves the rule. It is the most famous passage in Shakespeare today, coming from an art form that was supposed to exemplify the glory of Iambic Pentameter, and it's not till line 6 that we get an actual, true Iambic Pentameter.
Shakespeare has masterfully revealed Hamlet's troubled inner feelings in this soliloquy, stirring a reaction of sympathy and horror from the audience just by counting his syllables properly. And, by the way, you would never know that if you read it in your head. Hashtag
true facts.
Something else Shakespeare uses frequently is short lines. He uses them so often it would be hard to give examples, but their jarring effect can be put to all kinds of purposes.
Well, that was really short.
But if you really want to nerd out on Shakespearean meter, you should look for Alexandrines. These are 6-footed lines and usually indicate one or both of 2 things, either the character's nobility and regalness of spirit, or a transition in the action. For example, when Macbeth is dithering over whether to assassinate Duncan and take the crown, he speaks a line, "My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical." Is Macbeth reaching for a nobler way of viewing the world than consuming lust for power he has been experiencing? Or is this 6-footed line simply evidence of him seesawing back and forth between yes and no? You decide!
When you are studying a passage and you notice a disruption, mark it in your text. Whether that is a regular copy from the bookstore, the script of a play you are performing, or a paper on which you have typed or handwritten out the passage in question.
Try to use a device with Try not to use a device with a screen.
True facts.
True facts. We want to leave 21st century digital native mentality behind and truly experience something different.
After you have marked all the disruptions, you can analyze what you think it means for the character's state of mind that such a disruption occurred.
One little caveat before you go to town marking all the disruptions. Try to fit every line into straight iambic pentameter before you decide it is disrupted. Sometimes the meaning of a line changes based on what word is emphasized. A modern, non-poetic example is, "I didn't know you were going there." Listen to the shades of meaning.
I didn't know you were going there.
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 Shakespeare might have meant something different than you thought he did when you look at lines as if the meter were regular. Sometimes you literally cannot pronounce a word that way, and sometimes you'll just think a different choice makes more sense. But try it first!
Did you ever notice that sometimes there seems to be apostrophes in the wrong place in a Shakespeare text? One way Shakespeare and his contemporaries made words fit iambic pentameter when they mightn't otherwise is by doing an elision or expansion. An elision means that two syllables are so jammed together that they actually sound like one. We do this in contemporary English a lot. When was the last time you heard someone pronounce every syllable in temperature? In slang, we reduce even more syllables into one, such as I'm for I'm going to. Shakespeare's English used a few we do not. Another example from Macbeth is, I am in blood, stepped in so far, that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Or is short for over, which helps not only the meter in this case, but the rhyme. We could also argue that tedious is supposed to be 3 syllables and Macbeth is only saying 2, which makes it a second elision in that line.
An expansion, on the other hand, adds a syllable where we would not do so in conversational speech. Most commonly, this means pronouncing the ed at the end of past tense verbs like marked, used, or changed. You can also find one in a noun suffix. The word expansion can be an expansion. Again, you'll only know when an expansion should occur by speaking the text out loud and hearing or feeling when the meter is wrong. Try the prologue of Henry V. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. If you say invention properly, the line trails off. No last stress. Only 9 syllables for the line. Not exactly wording inspired by the brightest heaven. In Shakespeare's day, it would have been much more acceptable to say invention. In some modern productions, the actors and directors keep these expansions because of the physical impact they have on the audience. In others, the expansions are dropped because they seem too bizarre to keep the spectators involved in the story. A nice compromise is simply to hold the last syllable long enough to be 2. Invention. As always, you get to decide.
It is important to stress, pun intended, that this is supposed to be fun.
Meter is satisfying, like eating the meal you have been craving or finally executing that difficult musical passage you've been practicing all month.
It is satisfying, like the punchline of a joke, the lyric stylings of your favorite pop star, and that moment when you know exactly what to say to make the haters shut up. There's not a person on earth who lacks the capacity to enjoy the cadence of language.
If you get tripped up by the analysis and the meaning, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. Just like you probably figured out how to walk, read, catch a ball, or speak English in the first place.
And if you stumble, the drama llamas are here to catch you.
Next, we will release a video about why does Shakespeare use so many words we don't understand?
And does it matter?
And please, remember, if you like our vibe,
there is a button that is called subscribe.